Welcome back to another Explainer. So glad you're joining us today. Look, we're going to take a pretty fascinating journey. We're scaling all the way from that crumpled cash sitting in your pocket right up to the massive, complex machinery of a nation's entire economy. Basically, we're unpacking the public purse. We'll look at how governments actually manage their resources, how they balance their incredibly massive checkbooks, and, how they attempt to keep society running smoothly. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, money versus finance. Second, the definition of finance. Third, entering public finance. Fourth, 3 core economic functions. Fifth, balancing the public budget. And finally, number 6, the scope of public finance. Let's get right to it. Section 1, money versus finance. To kick things off, I actually want to start by challenging an assumption that, while almost all of us make on a daily basis without even realizing it. So think about this. Are money and finance actually the same thing? I mean, we use these terms interchangeably all the time, right? You might catch yourself saying, oh, I need to manage my money better, or I gotta get my finances in order. But in the rigorous world of economics, conflating these two is a fundamental misconception. Seriously, they are absolutely not the same thing. Here's the deal. Money functions simply as a medium of exchange. It is the tool that actually enables you to buy goods and services. We're talking about coins, currency notes, checks, or even digital payment systems like UPI, Paytm, and Google Pay. Currency is literally just one form of money. The term money itself is super broad and encompasses all these different instruments we use for transactions. Finance, on the other hand, is the art and science of managing that money. It covers the really vital decisions: how you earn income, how you allocate your spending, budgeting, saving, borrowing, and investing. Simply put, money is the tool, while finance is the overarching system and the strategic knowledge you need to actually use that tool effectively. All right, moving into section 2, the definition of finance. Now that we've totally separated the tool from the system, let's formalize how we actually define that overarching system. The Penguin Dictionary of Economics gives us this fantastically practical definition. Quote, finance is the provision of money when and where it is required. I absolutely love this, mostly because it just strips away all that complicated jargon. It just highlights the purely functional role of finance in a money-based economy. Whether you're an individual, a small startup, a massive nonprofit, or an entire sovereign nation, the core principle is universal. You need the right amount of funds in the right place at exactly the right time. So how does this actually play out depending on the entity we're looking at? Well, for business entities, procuring funds happens on the liability side of a balance sheet, and deploying them happens on the asset side. And that is strictly driven by the pursuit of profit, right? But take a look at the government sector. Governments procure funds through taxes and borrowing, sure, but they deploy those funds for public infrastructure, services, and welfare programs, often completely without any profit objectives whatsoever. The mechanics are kind of similar, but the ultimate goals, they literally couldn't be more different. Which brings us to Section 3. Entering public finance. This critical difference in goals means we need to zoom out from the micro level of everyday business and enter the macro level of our story. Basically, finance splits broadly into 2 categories. Private finance covers you, me, sole traders, partnerships, big companies, and nonprofits. Public finance, on the other hand, specifically looks at how central, state, and local governments, along with public institutions, acquire and utilize financial resources. Put simply, it's the study of how a government manages the public exchequer. We're talking about generating revenue, planning massive budgets, and managing public debt and fiscal responsibility. And the ultimate aim here, to ensure economic stability, equitable resource distribution, and real developmental progress through the transparent use of public funds. Okay, I want to pause for a second on this genuinely beautiful quote from the classical Sanskrit author Kalidasa. He wrote, "It is only for the good of the people that the king collects taxes, just as the sun draws moisture from the earth to return it 1,000-fold." I mean, what a powerful metaphor. It totally reframes taxation. It asks us to look at taxes not as some annoying burden, but as a crucial mechanism for generating social welfare. The resources are drawn up purely so they can rain back down where they are most needed, multiplying their positive impact on society. Section 4. 3 core economic functions. Of course, returning that moisture 1,000-fold requires some unbelievably complex management. And that brings us to the father of modern public finance, Richard A. Musgrave, and his framework for government activities. Musgrave defined public finance as, quote, the complex of problems that center around the income and expenditure activities of the government and their mutual relation. A nation's economy is infinitely complex, obviously, but Musgrave did something brilliant. He broke down this massive complexity into three distinct, manageable responsibilities that any functioning public economy simply must fulfill. Now, what's really fascinating here is how clearly these three functions are separated out. First up, the allocation function. This is all about making sure resources are efficiently directed to public goods. Think defense, the police force, highways, public health. Second is the distribution function. This is about ensuring a fair spread of income and wealth through things like subsidies, free education, or massive welfare schemes like MGNREGA in India. And third, the stabilisation function, maintaining macroeconomic stability, controlling inflation, and managing growth cycles through the nation's budget. A government is basically constantly juggling these three distinct balls. Moving to Section 5, balancing the public budget. So, we know what the government has to do. But how do they actually make the math work? Let's transition into the highly practical side of public finance by looking at the public budget. The economist Hugh Dalton noted that public finance is primarily concerned with the income and expenditure of public authorities, and, crucially, with the manner in which one is adjusted to the other. That right there highlights the great balancing act. It is a massive, real-world puzzle of adjusting the money coming in against the money going out. Let's imagine a hypothetical state government budget just to see this balancing act in action. On the left, we have a flush year, a surplus scenario. Let's say the state takes in 55,000 crore in total revenue from taxes and fees, and they spend 50,000 crore on infrastructure, health, and welfare. Revenue is greater than expenditure. Perfect. But look at the right side. This is a tight year, a deficit scenario. Revenue drops to 40,000 crore, but the state still absolutely has to spend 47,000 crore just to keep things running. Expenditure is outpacing revenue. So the crucial point here is exactly how the government adjusts to these realities. A surplus of 5,000 crore gives them some breathing room and options. They can use it for debt repayment, they can build up reserves, or just save it for future spending. But a deficit of 7,000 crore, that forces some really hard choices. That gap must be financed either through new borrowings, which directly adds to the public debt, or by enacting some pretty painful spending cuts to public services. Section 6. The scope of public finance. Managing those surpluses and deficits obviously requires a vast toolkit. So let's move to our final section to comprehensively outline the full scope and reach of public finance. The entire scope of this field really rests on 5 core pillars. Pillar 1, public revenue. That's the money coming in through taxes, fines, and fees. 2, public expenditure, the money going out. 3, public debt. Those are the loans taken when revenue inevitably falls short. 4, public financial administration. That's the bureaucratic mechanism that literally keeps the wheels turning. And 5, economic stabilization. That's using the first 4 pillars to keep the national economy balanced. Together, the whole shebang forms the foundation of a nation's fiscal policy. Now, if we zoom in specifically on public expenditure, it's super vital to understand that government spending isn't just one big monolith. It is very carefully categorized by its ultimate goal. Developmental spending builds the future. Think infrastructure, health, and education. Non-developmental spending keeps the state secure and functioning today, like defense, bureaucratic salaries, and paying the interest on previous debts. And finally, welfare spending acts as a safety net, providing subsidies, pensions, and poverty alleviation to the most vulnerable citizens. But as we know, money cannot manage itself. The step-by-step life cycle of public funds, which is known as public financial administration, starts with planning the budget, then administering the revenue collection, managing the expenditures, handling the public accounting, and executing financial controls to prevent misuse. And crucially, it ends with an independent audit and evaluation. In India, for example, this is done by the Comptroller and Auditor General, or CAG. This final step is absolutely vital for ensuring public accountability and transparency. Connecting this back to Musgrave's stabilization function we talked about earlier, here is exactly how the government pulls different fiscal levers to avoid the painful extremes of recessions and economic booms. During a recession, when demand is sluggish and unemployment is high, the government increases public expenditure to boost demand. If the economy is running too hot and causing inflation, they might actually increase taxation to reduce purchasing power and cool those prices down. And they use public borrowing to fund these strategic deficits without dangerously printing more money. So, to summarize our journey today, public finance is a subject built on analytical facts and hard data. It's a continuous administrative process, but above all else,
It really is an art. It's the highly complex and sometimes very political art of allocating limited resources to meet essentially unlimited public needs. It blends the positive, the objective facts of how governments collect money, with the normative, the subjective ethical judgments of how they should spend it to maximize social welfare.
I want to leave you with a thought to chew on today. Take a look around your own city or state. Think back to that beautiful Kalidasa metaphor. How effectively is your local government drawing moisture through taxes? And even more importantly, is it truly returning as a thousand-fold rain of public services, infrastructure, and welfare for you and your community? I mean, it is your money after all, and now you know exactly how the system is supposed to manage it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.